So today's first question is, what is inheritance? Explain different types of inheritances. How inheritance is done in multiple base classes, demonstrate. So let us first understand what is inheritance. What is inheritance? The technique of deriving a new class from an old one is called inheritance. The old class is referred to as the base class and the new class is referred to as a derived class or a base or subclass. Inheritance allows programmers to define a class in terms of another class. So in the new class, instead of writing the new data members and member functions all over again, they can simply just use whatever is actually defined in the base class. So here is the syntax. First you would write the class name and the derived class name. You will write class and the derived class name. And you would write visibility mode, like whether it's public, whether it's private or protected. And then you write the base class that you want to inherit or inherit. In a simple analogy, if at all we want to just compare and check with what is in a day-to-day language, then you can just you can define it like this. Derive quality and characteristics from parents or ancestors, like you inherit features of your parent. Example, you tell many a time she has inherited the beauty of her mother. So it's like you're inheriting some of the qualities of the parent or the base class in your derived class. Now, when a function is, when a class inherits the base class, so here like there is a faculty class and there is a student class. There is actually not a, you can't call it as a faculty class. Basically, you can tell it something like you have a person class and then you have a student class. So the person class inherits, the student class inherits everything about the person class. So he can actually, the data member, the method, some of which will be inherited in the student class. Now it's up to the student class whether he want to inherit, whether he want to use some of the methods or not. Okay, or he want to again derive and he want to actually override those particular methods and create or write their own function basically or own method. Now when you actually inherit, when a derived class inherits from the base class, there are certain rules like, so the visibility rules, what I'm talking about is the visibility rules. Now here I have again derived the class, derived class name and then the visibility mode and the base class. So you have a class and you want to call it as a derived one or something like that. Is a derived one is a name. Then you tell what is the visibility. It's a public. Then you can tell which class you want to inherit. So you want to inherit class 1 and in private mode you want to inherit class 2. Now what this visibility public and private means, I would explain to you that. When a base class is inherited as a public class in the derived class, the inherited derived class will be able to access all the public functions, all the public data members of the base class. all the public functions and even the protected ones. Protected, the public and the protected data members and the methods of the base class can be inherited or will here in the derived class. But if you inherit, if the visibility is protected, like if you tell protected class 1, then what happens is the derived class will only be able to inherit all the protected class members, and it will not be able to inherit the protected class member will be able to inherit both the public and the protected class. But what happens here is the derived class, even the public class, whichever are inherited by the derived class, will be visible henceforth like a protected class. So if there is another derived class which is derived from this derived class 1, then it is by default the public methods and the public functions will be protected. So they will not be able to directly access the public function because it's no more public, it's protected. Now as we are seeing here, if this base class, if the derived class inherits the base class as a private class, then it will be able to inherit all the public and the protected data members. But henceforth, so if any other class, if derived class 1 is again inherited and by a derived class 2, then that derived class 2 will not be able to access any of this public and the protected members. Naturally, private members are never inherited. So nowhere you see that private members are there. So private member by default are never inherited. Only the public and the protected members are inherited. And if you have actually if your derived class has a visibility of like a private, then the next derived class will not be able to access this particular even the public and the private member, because this public and the protected members have also become private members, and the private members are actually not inheritable. So I hope it's very clear. Now these are the different types of inheritance. You can have a base class A and the derived class B. So it's a single inheritance. The derived class B is inheriting one base class, and that is called as a single inheritance. If there is one derived class and it is inheriting two base classes, then it is called as a multiple inheritance, because it is inheriting two multiple classes basically. And in case if there is one base class, but there are many derived classes which are actually inheriting the same base class, then it becomes a hierarchical inheritance. So you have a base class called class A, then class B, class C, class D, all these are inheriting class A, then it becomes a hierarchical inheritance. Now, if you have a class A as a base class and that is derived by the class B, so the derived class B is a derived class and it is inheriting the base class A, then you have another class C which is a derived class which is inheriting the derived class which is a base class as class B. So it becomes a multi-level inheritance. So class A is derived, class A is the class B is a derived class and it is having a base class as class A. So the class C is having a base class as class B. So class B is inheriting class A and class C is inheriting class B. So naturally even it will be able to inheritance the class A also. But again I told you the rules. This particular rules are going to apply this inheritance rules how you are actually inheriting them. So if you are inheriting them as a public, then naturally it is like everything whatever was visible to the class B will be visible to class C as well. But if you are inheriting that as a protected, then everything becomes protected, so only the public functions will also become protected. Now if you are inheriting as a private, then none of the variables can directly, or none of the data members or the methods can directly be accessed by the class C. Now this is a hybrid class. If class A is inherited by class B and class D, and both class B and class D are again inherited by class C, so it is something like a hierarchical inheritance at one stage, that is on the top of A has been inherited by class B and class C, so it becomes a hierarchical inheritance, and then it becomes a multiple inheritance for class C. It is inheriting class B and class C. So this is called as a hybrid inheritance. We'll see all this with some examples. So let me show you with some example. Okay, I think there is the next question basically is write a C++ program which uses the concept of simple inheritance. So they're all relating to the inheritance. So I will show you an example. I will demonstrate to you basically an example. So this is multiple inheritance. So I will actually start with a single inheritance. Now this is a single inheritance. So there is an employee class and you have a protected salary. Then there is a developers class, and in the developers class you have a function called salary. And this function salary, which is in a public, here you are actually accessing the protected member directly of the base class. So you can just see here, this is an employee class which is a base class. The class developer is a derived class. And it is accessing it as a, so we will first access it as a, it doesn't matter what you access it as, it is because this particular, this will be able to access everything, and like the next object, the next class will not be able to access it. So let me write it anything, doesn't matter. I will show you with both public and, so here I wrote public. So in the main class we are creating an object of the developers class basically. So the developers class is this. We are creating an object of the developers class, and then what we do is we are calling the function salary, and this salary function is in turn calling the data member of the base class. Let us see it works. Let us see whether it compiles. So let me compile this. Yes, it's compiling, and let me execute this. Build and execute. So it is telling enter the salary. So let me enter something. Okay, so I entered a salary, and you can see it is displayed the salary. So we are able to access this variable if whether we inherit as a public or as a protected, it should not make any difference to the very immediate class. So let me show you that basically. So now I'm inheriting as a protected. It's successfully, and again the same thing. So it's actually working properly. We can also do it like a private. Even though we are inheriting as a private, we should not have any problem. It's compiling properly. Okay, and we can execute. So you can see it's working properly. No, this is actually a single inheritance. Now I'll show you an example where you will have a multiple inheritance. Or so here I've created already an example called multiple inheritance, and it's the same again. Here we have an employee class, and we have a same developers class. The developer class where we are inheriting as a protected, and then we have another class called niche developer. The niche developers class is also trying to access the same variable directly, the salary variable from the base class. Now let us see whether it actually compiles and whether it works. So we are creating now the object directly of the niche variable, and we want to access from the niche variable, that is the multi-level inheritance. Okay, so let me show you it in the diagram what we are exactly doing here. We are doing this multi-level, the class A, class B, class C, something of that kind. Okay, so we are doing a multi-level. So here we have a employee class which is inherited by the developer, and the niche developer inherits the developer. Now let us try to compile this. We compile, it is compiling properly. We build it, and let us see whether we can execute. So we are executing. So you see we are able to access this particular variable, salary variable, directly from the multi-level, that is second level derived class basically. But had we actually inherited this as a private, then here it is not a problem, but this particular derived class will not be able to inherit that. So let us check that whether it is true. So if we inherit it as a private and then try to compile this, then you see an error. You can check that. So we are seeing so many errors there. Actually it's one error. In function niche salary, the class employee is inaccessible. You can just see here it's written as a inaccessible. Okay, I can show you something like that. So it is inaccessible. So what do we do? I hope you have understood very clearly that if you are, I'm exactly trying to explain to you this particular one. Okay, so now we are actually trying to, we have inherited as a private. So you cannot have a multi-level. You cannot, the next derived class will not be able to access it. So if at all we actually, in case of niche developer, if we have a private, and this I have already shown you here. So if you have a private also, it is actually, and we have created an object, you can access it. But if you have a private, here you can see if you create a private developer, then The next niche developer will not be able to access this. Even if you make it public, it doesn't make it any difference whether you make it public or private. It doesn't make a difference. It's all the same. It is going to still have that error. It will not be able to access this salary from the parent base class. So I hope it's very clear how this is working. You want me to we have already executed and checked this, so you can make it public and it compiles and execute. So you can see this, it's working. Now here I have another example. This is again single inheritance, which I will already explain to you. I have another example here, multiple inheritance. So let us go back to let us check what is multiple inheritance. So this is a multiple inheritance. The class C is actually inheriting two base class A and class B. Something of this kind is what I'm trying to explain to you now. So we have a student class and we have another class called extra curriculum class, and the output class basically inherits the student class as well as the extracurricular class. Now the student class is having three data members, that is roll number, M1 and M2. This is protected. So if it is protected, only the derived class can use this, and this cannot be accessed from the main function or outside the base class or the derived class. So outside this base and the derived class, it cannot be accessed if it is protected. So the public is a function which can be accessed from anywhere. Now this extracurricular class is another class. So one is a student class, it's having three variables. The extracurricular is having one variable, xn. Then this particular output class, it's having its own two variables, that is total and average. And it's having a method called display. The display method is accessing directly M1, M2 from the students class and XM from the extracurricular class and making it as a total. And the total is divided by 3 and it's made as an average. So we are making an object of the output class only directly. So we are not accessing any of the base classes. We are accessing only the final output derived class. So object O is created and O.get. So O.get is actually trying to get the data. It is accessing the public method from the parent base class. Then one of the parent base class. Then O.getSM. This is from the other parent base class, that is extracurriculum, that is getSM. It is accessing this one. And the display, it is accessing from the derived class display function. And here again in the derived class, we are accessing the variables and we are displaying the variables. So let us see how it works, whether it compiles or not compiled. So let us compile this. Yes, it is compiling properly, and let us see the answers. Execute. So enter the roll number. So I enter it as 5 and enter the highest marks of two subjects basically. So I enter one as 98 and the other one as 95. enter the marks for extracurricular activities. So we enter that as a 90. So the roll number is 5. All these marks is, if they are added, 98, 95 and 90, it becomes 283. The average is 94. So you see, it is able to access the data members of the derived class, is able to access the data members of both the base class. So I hope it's very clear.